Welcome to the League of Women Voters of Snohomish County Forum for candidates for Legislative District 38. This legislative district includes Tulalip, Marysville, and North Everett, with the district line ending just south of the Boeing Freeway. I'm your moderator, Vicki Roberts Gassler, member and past president of the League of Women Voters of Snohomish County. Candidates for State Legislative District 38 Senator are Bernard Moody and June Robinson. Candidates for Representative Position 1 are Julio Cortez and Gary Kemp. Candidates for Representative Position 2 are Mary Fosse and Mark James. As always, the League has invited all candidates. Mr. James was unable to attend. The League thanks all the candidates for running for office, for their willingness to serve the community if elected, and for participating in this forum. We remind our viewers that it is the policy of the League to be nonpartisan. Therefore, we neither endorse nor oppose candidates or parties. We do educate and support voters and the election process in our communities. Rules for participation in this forum were sent ahead of time to all candidates, and they have agreed to engage in respectful communication. Let me briefly explain the question and answer period rules. Questions have not been shared. We thank all those community members who sent us recommendations about local issues. Each candidate will have either 60 or 90 seconds to respond. I will state this clearly. We are using a countdown timer visible to all candidates. Time limits on answers will be strictly enforced. I will change the starting order for each question, rotating through all the candidates to ensure a random and fair sequence. The order for the first question will be Mr. Moody, Ms. Robinson, Mr. Kemp, Mr. Cortez, then Ms. Fosse. Let's begin. The first question will be 60 seconds. We begin with Mr. Moody. What qualifications and experience make you a strong candidate for this position?
Hi, my name is Bernard Moody, and I'm a candidate for District 38. My candidacy began in 2020 when I was asked to run against June Robinson, who happened to be my neighbor across the street at the time. And I always like to throw that out there just to make sure that we maintain a friendly discourse and engage in civil discourse at the same time. So just like June Robinson, I'm on the opposite side of the fence, just like I was on the opposite side of the street. And my qualifications for all of this pretty much comes from my experience in the field of law enforcement, specifically in corrections. I've been doing that for almost 34 years. I've worked in the prison systems as well as the jail system. I've been here at Snohomish County for almost 25, or actually a little over 25 years, and a member of the district at that same time. So I think I would be able to be a good...
Thank you. Ms. Robinson.
Thank you. June Robinson, State Senator running for re-election in the 38th District. I have served in the State House representing the 38th Legislative District for 7 years and have now served 2 years as well in the State Senate. And I'm honored to represent the people of the 38th Legislative District running for re-election. Prior to my time in the legislature, I had a long career in health and human services in Snohomish County. I've worked on community health, local public health, affordable housing issues, as well as other services that people need in order to thrive and be healthy in our community. I'm a mom of 2 young adults who went through Everett Public Schools, and I've been a neighbor and a resident here in the 38th Legislative District for approximately 25 years. In my time in the legislature, I worked across the aisle to pass significant legislation such as our state's paid family and medical leave.
Thank you. Mr. Kemp.
My name is Gary Kemp. I'm running in the 38th Legislative District here. I've lived in Marysville for over 35 years. I've been a resident, went to high school, grade school here. I'm also a union electrician. I've done construction all my life, so I'm not a typical politician. I was a union business representative for 5 years. I've led many jobs as a foreman and as a union steward. I've been married for over 30 years with 2 wonderful daughters. I've volunteered in my community quite heavily. I'm involved in Rotary, president of my Jeep club right now, which we actually work with the DNR to help forest land. And thank you for having me here.
Thank you. Mr. Cortez.
Good evening, everyone. Julio Cortez. Well, my family and I immigrated from Mexico when I was about 5 years old. And through their support, I was able to go to college, first Wall Community College, and then Western Washington University. After college, I spent about a little bit under a decade working for Cocoon House, a local nonprofit that serves at-risk and homeless youth and families in Snohomish County, which gave me great insight on the struggles that not only our low-income but middle-income families face. The last 5 years, I spent working for the city of Everett in their communications and economic development department. I'm very connected to the community. I'm part of a few boards, including Leadership Snohomish County, the Everett Public School District Fiscal Advisory Committee, Greater Seattle Partners, Economic Development Council, the PFD that supports the Angel of the Winds Arena, and the Washington Low Income Housing Alliance. So through lived experience and professional experience, I feel very well-rounded to tackle some of the largest issues that we have, not only here in our region, but statewide. So I appreciate the time today.
Thank you. Ms. Fosse.
Thanks. My name is Mary Fosse. I currently serve on the Everett City Council. I'm running for state rep position 2, and I'm honored to have Mike Sell's endorsement for this seat. I live in Everett. I'm a mother of 2, and until this year, I was recently working at the legislature. I serve on a variety of boards and commissions right now, including the Everett Public Schools Fiscal Advisory Council, and I have past work as an operations manager and a small business owner, and I've just been a very big community advocate for a very long time in this area. And what makes me a good advocate and candidate for this seat is beyond having that experience at the legislature and nearly 20 years of business and public service experience, is I have the lived experience of childhood poverty and homelessness that gives me a valuable perspective in this role of understanding the nuance of those issues. And I know the barriers that my neighbors face. So I look forward to bringing that perspective to Olympia.
Thank you. We will allow 90 seconds each for the next several questions. Starting with Ms. Robinson, what are your priorities for the next legislative session?
Thank you. My priorities for the next legislative session include working again across the aisle to craft an operating budget that reflects the needs and values of the people of Washington. I serve as the vice chair of the Ways and Means Committee in the Senate, being chosen by my peers to hold that position. So I'm very honored to spend a lot of my time in Olympia working on our state operating budget, which looks across all the operations of state government and decides how best to fund them. Policy-wise, I'm going to be continuing my work in the healthcare space, particularly around affordability of healthcare, so that we can work on do additional work on drug prices, prescription drug prices. I passed a transparency bill a few years ago, but there's a lot more work to be done in that space, and making sure that residents of Washington have affordable options for healthcare. I also know that we need to continue to respond to the Supreme Court's decision around personal possession of substances of what have been illegal drugs, called the Blake decision.
Thank you. Mr. Kemp.
Top 3 priorities when I get to Olympia. Number 1 is public safety. We need to be able to give our police officers the tools to be able to do their jobs so people feel safe in their homes, and businesses feel safe. Number 2 is economy. Our economy has gotten out of control with over budget spending, spending that's not accounted for. We've got to be able to give reprieve to the citizens that are living in this state right now. And it's hurting normal working families each and every day. The gas prices are out of control. We need to get a control of that. And number three, I'm going to say schools. I believe we need to fully fund our schools, but we need to have our schools make sure the money actually gets to the children, not to the bureaucrats or to any other division before it gets to the children. It needs to get to the kids first. That's what I plan to work on.
Thank you. Mr. Cortez.
Yeah, great question. So, I've been doorbelling quite a bit and I've been meeting with a lot of people, and that's really helped me to cement my priorities. My experience at Cocoon House, housing is a big priority for me, making sure that we are able to diversify the housing stock at different price points for folks to be able to afford to live where they work or afford to live where they want to be and have family and friends is a priority for me. The homelessness issue, of course, is close to my heart. Continuing to support the ground level work that's happening to get folks off the streets. I want to focus a little bit more on the root causes of homelessness and build wraparound services around not only our low income folks, but middle income families who may be a paycheck or two away from losing their home or a medical emergency away from losing their home. Public safety, that's another one for me. I work very closely with the Everett Police Department in my role at the city, and ensuring that they have the specialized staff that they need to respond to calls, which are a lot different than they were 10 to 20 years ago. It is something that I want to do. I want to support police departments to ensure that their police force is representative of the communities that they serve. So diversify the police departments, and also increasing training around de-escalation techniques would be something big for me as well. As far as the economy, as part of the economic development department, I believe our economy is the most prosperous when everyone can afford to participate in it as consumers and small business owners and entrepreneurs. CEOs and businesses aren't the job creators in our communities, people are. So I want to make sure that I support this as much as possible.
Thank you. Ms. Fosse.
Thanks. I would also like to second Senator Robinson and Mr. Cortez on their comments, but doorbelling, chatting with our neighbors, it's tackling the housing affordability and homelessness crisis is definitely, on everyone's mind right now. What they see is like a huge priority that we need to address. There's a lot of neighbors that want us to do better in supporting our schools and social infrastructure. And we definitely need to be looking at more holistic approaches to public health and safety. And I think that those are the main priorities that our neighbors are explaining to us, because a lot of people are struggling right now. As far as the housing affordability, it's impacting everyone. And so we really need to work on some of the systemic causes of homelessness. And I have the lived experience to help tackle this issue compassionately, but also directly. Housing first policies is something that I definitely support, but I'm also a huge proponent of, sustainable and mixed income and mixed use development and affordable housing, especially around high transit corridors and incentivizing that for safer and healthier communities. We need to do some critical investments in our healthcare system, and mental health issues is another major crisis that we need to work a little bit harder to address those.
Thank you. Mr. Moody.
Hi, when I'm elected, first order of business will be to undo the Blake decision, who has done nothing but handcuff our law enforcement officers from being able to protect the communities that they live in and that they sworn to serve. Being that I am a sergeant for the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office, I get to see up close and personal the results of the lack of discipline when it comes to our legislators for making laws that keep us safe. Our current legislators have been in power for years. Most of them been protecting their careers more than serving their communities. The idea of servant leadership means that they serve as compared to ruling. And I think all the problems that we're facing in our communities with public safety, the economy, and all those things will just lay at the feet of the party that's currently been in power. They've been there for over 30 years. If you go to my website, voteforbernardmoody.com, you'll see a graph on there that shows literally every year that we've had what office had been in power and in what control of what house. So I see that whatever problems that we have today, those are just indictments against the party that's currently in power. And then for them to offer promises of fixing those problems that they themselves have created doesn't really think or sit well with me as a citizen, because people are dying on the streets, including law enforcement.
Thank you. Third question, Mr. Kemp, you're first this time. Would you support making any changes to existing state laws or the state constitution regarding access to abortion? Why or why not? And if so, what changes would you propose?
So right now, I'll put it right out there, right front. I am a pro-life candidate, but I would not change anything the state has already voted on. The citizens of 1970 voted on referendum 20, and it was passed. I wouldn't make any changes to it right now, because I would respect what the voters of Washington State have wanted. That's what they asked for. That's what they wanted. I won't make any changes to it.
Thank you. Mr. Cortez.
Thank you. So, I'm grateful to live in a state that protects abortion rights for all people. And, I think there's still work to do for us to protect those rights, and not only protect them, but expand those rights for everyone that needs those types of services. The things that we need to do, I think, right now, is because of the position that we are because of the federal decision, was we need to expand access to abortion services. Right now, I think there was like a 300% increase that we were expecting in folks that were going to be seeking this type of service. And that's just not sustainable. It's not safe. And it could, honestly be life-threatening for a lot of people. Folks coming from neighboring states to come to the services here will ensure long waits that could be detrimental to a lot of people's health. The availability of centers in Washington State is not enough to meet the demand and keep folks safe. So I'd like to, like I said, not only protect these rights, but expand them. And that's what I would do in the legislature. Right now they're safe because of the party that's there. But that can be, that can change if the other party takes control. So I want to make sure that I'm a champion for abortion rights. And like I said, and I'll say it again, and I'll keep saying it, not only to protect those rights, but to expand those rights as well.
Thank you. Ms. Fosse? Ms. Fosse?
I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Cortez for your comments on that. I appreciate them. Next session, we will need fierce advocates fighting for expanding those rights and protecting the ones that we have. I would only support making changes to existing law if we are strengthening accessibility or the right to actually access abortion and reproductive health care. In the 2022 session, there was a House Bill 1851 that passed, and that took incredible care to ensure pregnant people in our state are legally protected in their right to access abortion care, but we still have really uneven distributed care, and inequities are still persistent in communities that have been without quality health care or in insufficient insurance coverage. I would also support policies that are aimed at addressing maternal and infant mortality rates, and then especially those addressing any sort of systemic issues that have impacted racial disparities in health outcomes. This will definitely be one of the things I think our neighbors will be considering in the upcoming election, given the people in this race.
Thank you. Mr. Moody.
If I remember correctly, the question was what we change to the state constitution, but it seems like the answers have all been dominated by the abortion issue. But there are some other things I'd probably like to change about the Constitution, such as...
Excuse me, but it was specifically about as regards access to abortion.
Oh, okay. But the
Yeah.
little question disappeared again. Well, you know what? I personally believe that I am pro-choice. I believe that my choice would be to choose life. I believe that, as I said before, the Washington State has been in power for the last 30 years. And they've pretty much set the standard for women's rights, and we've done a good job at protecting those. Just like my colleague said, referendum 20 was passed by the voters, and we would, as a party, not seek to change it, and neither would I. I don't necessarily agree with all of the laws that we have, but I am sworn to protect and serve them, and so I would do that. I find that everyone talks about safety and issues, but no one seems to have any concerns about the safety of the fetus and or the unborn child that's being aborted, because the very term of the word itself means to be leaving something behind, such as the life of the child that's in there. I also believe that we're talking about the wrong side of the problem. We should be talking about the solution to the problem before it becomes the accident and or the problem, and find ways of being able to create teachings that would keep people from getting pregnant prematurely.
Thank you. Ms. Robinson.
Thank you. Well, I would certainly make sure that we maintain the access to abortion across our state that currently exists for everyone. And we need to make sure that there is true access, and that's what I want to work towards. It may indeed need to be a constitutional amendment. I know how high a bar that is, and it will be challenging, no doubt about it, to accomplish. But as I talk to my colleagues and policy staff about the options available to us, it does seem like a constitutional amendment to protect access to abortion because of all of the consolidation of healthcare in our state, and much of that is now under Catholic healthcare organizations. It is not clear that all parts of our state do have easy access to abortion services. So that's what I want to take a look at, do what we can as a legislature and as, as for the people that I serve, to make sure that access to abortion is easily available throughout our state.
Thank you. Beginning with Mr. Cortez, what, if anything, should be done to mitigate the impact of climate change on Washington state?
Well, something definitely should be done. I've been talking to a few organizations that focus on that. And honestly, it's terrifying, right? Climate change, we're already seeing the effects, I think, much sooner than a lot of folks anticipated seeing the effects. And, it has to be a large effort. It can't just be companies telling folks to recycle. It has to be that those companies themselves making a large effort to reduce their carbon footprint. I think moving away from oil and carbon as energy sources is important. I know that's going to take time, but I think we're heading in the right direction. But one of the things that I also want to do is the last few years we've been able to attract companies like Helion, TerraPower, that are working on innovative solutions to the energy crisis, to energy substitutions. And we need to empower those companies a little bit more to do it in a safe, clean way. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And I also believe that we need to keep those other major corporations that are causing this climate change issue accountable for what they're doing. They need to be put on the stand for what they're doing to the climate, and actually be penalized for what they're doing, and then those penalties be taken to further our environment friendly policies to move forward. So
Thank you. Ms. Fosse, over to you.
Thank you. I agree with what my counterpart, Mr. Cortez, also was talking about with the green industry coming to our city. We are headed to a cleaner future, and we really need to be thoughtful and intentional along the way when we're building out a low carbon economy, and have a focus that where we're also putting people to work, being intentional about the pathways we're creating, and looking at, expanding our grids and investments into building more clean energy infrastructure. If we want to have, labor buy-in and truly fix climate change, it would be helpful to make it somebody's job. And so I think that we can have millions of high quality jobs, as well as putting forward bold solutions to climate change when we're doing the proper amount of stakeholdering with that. I support 1099, the recent House bill providing funding for local governments. And I think it also comes down to how various aspects of policy is tackled with expansion of renewable fuels to help meet emission goals and stormwater management, et cetera. So I think we got a pretty good coalition of legislators that are realizing that this is going to be a priority in the upcoming session too.
Thank you. Mr. Moody.
Well, as a citizen, I look at the environment as being something that our current party that's been in power for the last 3 decades have had their hands on completely, and they've not really completed all of the solutions that they're wanting to do now. So I'm looking at the possibility that they're just giving us a bunch of lip service and telling us the things that we might want to hear, to think that they're going to be doing something better. I look at the homelessness problems that we have in the drug addictions that we have in our city, and I don't see that problem has gotten fixed. And they've been in control of the solutions for decades. So if that is a predictor of future progress, then I'm pretty concerned about the things in the rhetoric that I hear today. I'm looking at the possibility of having more sustainable solutions where we slowly get off the grid and depend upon the things that we have by allowing innovation, private companies, and being able to create industry that will actually expand. We have lots of technology, a lot of smart people out there. I don't see why we're not using them. From the sound of it, all the Democrats want to do is create more big government, big institutions, have investments, which means somebody's going to pay taxes every time I hear that word. So I'm more concerned about how we're going to get there, not the problem of us needing to get there. That's been solved. We need to do that.
Thank you. Ms. Robinson.
Thank you. Climate change is a huge problem, and it requires all of us to take action. I think government's role is to motivate and incentivize that action and make it easy, quite frankly, for citizens to move in the direction of a future where there are less carbon emissions. One thing we need to do as a state is making sure we're taking full advantage of leveraging the federal dollars that are coming through the Inflation Reduction Act. There's significant investment there that we can build upon. We did pass in, I believe, 2021, a Climate Commitment Act that will tax carbon emissions. And so the big polluters, not everyday people, but big corporations who are polluting will be taxed for that. And that money is being then reinvested into green infrastructure in our state. We need that. We need infrastructure like electric vehicle charging stations, better storage for renewable energy. And those are all roles of government, I believe, and to incentivize that infrastructure to happen so that citizens, the people that I represent in the 38th Legislative District, can work themselves, take action themselves to reduce carbon and, address climate change on an individual basis.
Thank you. Mr. Kemp.
Yeah, climate change, we definitely need to start moving towards cleaner energy, but not at the expense of killing our family wage jobs that most of Everett and Marysville and the Toledo area work in. As my two other counterparts who are supported by unions did mention, we start getting rid of some of these jobs that are actually producing our power. Those union members are going to lose their jobs. We do need to find ways to create other options, like the federal dollars that are coming in. Those need to be invested properly into private companies that are actually creating these. I can't remember those names of ones Mr. Cortez had mentioned. I know a couple of them are based in Everett, but those need to be invested into those companies, getting that new technology out here. We've put up thousands and thousands of windmills on 1 million acres. They still don't produce enough electricity. I'd like to see more invested in nuclear power. You get more power on a smaller footprint. We definitely need to start moving towards a greener energy, but like I said, not at the expense of people's jobs.
Thank you. Okay, we're getting some background noise from Mr. Moody.
No, sorry,
Okay, thank you.
a radio.
Yes. This question goes first to Ms. Fosse. What do you believe are the 3 best ideas for reducing the likelihood of violent firearms incidents in our state?
Sorry about that. Yeah, preventing violence in our communities must be a priority for elected officials. It's something that our neighbors are bringing up because they're noticing it firsthand. And we need to be better about stopping that cycle of firearm death and injury. I know that there has been about 70% of gun deaths are by suicide. So investments into mental health care and storage laws are really critical in reducing the rate of firearm fatalities in the state. I've personally lost a friend to gun violence, and we need to be treating it as the public health epidemic that it is. We should approach it through, at the legislature, data-driven and kind of holistic, equitable policy decisions. BIPOC communities are most impacted by gun violence and police violence, and it's absolutely preventable. So we need to make sure that our neighbors are safe and comprehensive on all levels of government. And I look forward to working with a variety of avenues to create higher access to mental health services and providers for both our community and law enforcement.
Thank you. Mr. Moody.
I think the biggest problem that we have with gun violence is that too many criminals have guns and they're using them to commit crimes. The gun itself didn't have anything to do with it. It's the person who used it. So just like a car is not responsible for a car accident, but the driver. So I would say that we would probably need to take a look at why we allow pass laws that make crime or criminals more emboldened to do crimes, and such as the crime where it took the life of every police officer just recently, where the guy was just taking guns from out of one trunk, transferring them to another in broad daylight. So I think we need to toughen up our laws in order to let criminals know that if you commit crimes, you go to jail. Not this catch and release program that the current party in power has seemed to think that might help the community by putting more criminals on the streets. So that will be the first step that I think that will keep the gun issue or the gun violence off of our radar. Secondly, I think we need to have police officers that can do the job. This evade and running away from. There's a video that the sheriff just put out today on YouTube and on Facebook that shows a clip from the actual body cams of officers on how criminals will just leave the scene of the accident or the confrontation, and so that needs to change.
Thank you. Ms. Robinson.
Thank you. Gun violence is an epidemic in our communities, and the citizens of our state have at the ballot box through initiative, we've passed a number of policies that are aimed to address gun violence, such as universal background checks, safe storage laws. What we need to do, what I feel where efforts need to be focused right now is making sure that our courts and our law enforcement departments have the information necessary to actually carry out those laws that the people of Washington have enacted. Our extreme risk protection order, where a family member or an individual or the courts can petition to have guns taken away from someone who is at extreme risk of violence. We need to examine and make sure that those are working the way they're intended to work, so that family members know about that policy and know how to petition the court, and then that our courts have good access to data and information in order to enact that. I really, the State Patrol is charged with putting together the database for background checks, and I think that needs some attention to make sure it's fully resourced.
Thank you. Mr. Kemp.
I hate to say it, but Mr. Moody took most of my answer. I watch the news quite regularly. I have not seen once yet where a law-abiding citizen who owns a gun has shot anybody, not in this state. It's mostly criminals. So as said before, we need our police officers to be able to do their jobs, be able to book criminals in jail and leave them in jail. That'll solve 70% of the gun violence problems in this state. I mean, and he stole my analogy, you know, when a car gets in an accident, it's not the car's fault, it's the driver's fault, because the driver wasn't paying attention. I mean, and I do have to agree with Senator Robinson. We do need some better background checks on who's actually purchasing guns. I don't know how we would look into where criminals are getting guns from. I'm not even sure where to start looking at that. But we need to have better mental health checks on who's actually getting guns, purchasing them legally, and using them for these crimes.
Thank you. Mr. Cortez.
Thank you. Well, you know, first, I very much agree with Senator Robinson that this is a crisis nationally. You know, I've been endorsed by the Alliance for Gun Responsibility, which is a nonpartisan organization, and learned about how Washington state gun safety laws are ahead of many other states. You know, we still have a lot of work to do. And I believe that most gun owners are responsible and take safety seriously. And I want to make that clear. But, you know, we need to place a higher priority on our community, not only feeling safe, but being safe. And we need to continue to strengthen common sense gun laws. You know, folks need to ensure that their guns are properly and safely stored. That's a huge issue. I've supported the Everett Police Department on a campaign to try and get folks to make sure that they store those guns. So that's a big thing that we can do. We need to ensure that guns are kept away from dangerous individuals, right? Yeah, the analogy that some of the candidates here said about the car, look at how much you have to do to make sure that you can drive a car. You need to get a license, you need to get tested. We need to do more to make sure that those type of policies stay in place. As well as the extreme risk protection orders. You know, we need to make sure that those are taken seriously as well. And like candidate Fosse said, I agree with that as well, that we need more mental health support for folks out there, because yes, most deaths happen from suicide, and mental health support is needed a lot. So, you know, we can and must do better as a nation, but I'm excited to do my part here in the state of Washington when I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you. The next question goes to Mr. Moody first. Do you believe the taxing system in Washington state is equitable and sufficient to meet the needs of the state and local communities? If not, what changes would you propose?
Well, I think right now our taxes, especially me as a citizen that pays them, we're getting hit pretty big. And if I remember correctly, Senator Robinson might be able to answer this question better, because I believe we had a $17 billion surplus at the end of the legislative year. And I don't see any of that being given back to the cities or states to help relieve some of the tax burdens that we actually have and have been in suffering through. I believe we need to look at a common sense approach of being able to, I kind of like the flat the flat rate tax system where we just have a rate of tax that everybody pays across the board. Cut the loopholes out, cut the business, all of these little loopholes that keep businesses and or politicians and or millionaires from having to pay their fair share of taxes. I think if you make money off of the people, you should be able to be willing to give some of that money back fairly and equitably. So we want to talk about equity. Let's talk about how we can create a equitable tax system that will give everybody that makes money off of the other taxpayers a better way of paying that tax instead of getting like zero taxes from billionaires that own these corporations like Amazon. I also believe that we can do better with doing some tax relief. So if I'm in office and when I'm in office, I will work to do that.
Thank you. Ms. Robinson?
Thank you. Well, our tax system is not fair, and it's very complex. We largely depend on sales tax in the state of Washington, and then the other two legs of the stool, as we call them, are property tax and the business and occupation B&O tax. B&O tax has been around for a long time. It's our version of a business income tax. However, it's a tax on gross rather than net income for a business, which seems very unfair. And as a result of that, we have, as Mr. Moody said, a million loopholes or exemptions to the B&O tax. So if I can wave a magic wand, I would replace that with a flat rate or a graduated or more fair business tax that would tax net income rather than gross income. We saw what happened during the 2008 recession because of our state's reliance on sales tax, where the state revenue drastically decreased. And but we have not yet been able to change that. So there's a lot of work to be done. However, in my time in the legislature, I've learned that changing a tax, even no matter how unpopular it is extremely difficult.
Thank you. Mr. Kemp?
Well, we are taxed very heavily right now in this state. And with what I know right now, more taxes are coming. With the majority party in power right now, especially with the Climate Commitment Act, we're going to be getting taxed more and more and more on our fuel that we use each and every day for our vehicles. We need to find a better tax system that taxes everybody equally. I don't know whether you want to do it where it's gross or net, but like last legislative session, we did have like a $17 billion leftover budget. That where did it go? We could have given a tax credit back to the people in Washington State, but we don't know where it went. We definitely need to work on the tax system.
Thank you. Mr. Cortez?
Great. Well, it's definitely not equitable. Washington, I think we all know Washington State has one of the most upside down tax systems in the nation. And, our lowest income families are paying a far greater share of their income in taxes than the super rich. And that needs to change. Poll after poll shows Washington voter support making billionaires contribute what they owe in taxes. And we can strengthen the middle class and grow our economy from the middle out. I'm sure some of you have heard the middle out economics, but we need to do that by putting more money in the pockets of working and middle class families while making sure that the wealthy pay what they owe in taxes to fund our schools, roads, the services that lead to more vibrant communities. The Amazons are getting rich, and the way they're getting rich is by transporting goods on taxpayer roads. So they should be contributing more to that. Families right now, especially coming out of the pandemic, they still need relief. So I agree with some of the comments here by some of the candidates. And I want to make sure that we treat families the way that we treat the big corporations when they need bailouts. Our families need bailouts and they need them now. Like I said earlier, through my work at Cocoon House, I know that families, and not only low-income families, but middle-income families are a paycheck or two away of losing their homes or a medical emergency away from losing their homes. And we need to make sure that we support them the way that we support our big businesses.
Thank you. Ms. Fosse.
Thanks. Yeah, without having the income tax in Washington and raising our government revenue from sales tax and property taxes and even problematic B&O taxes, and the low and middle income taxpayers do pay a larger share of their income from in-state taxes. And our Washington schools are struggling, and we have, workforce shortages and a lack of access to counselors and mental health supports, and facilities are struggling to find resources to replace aging boilers and remove lead from their drinking waters. And a record number of neighbors are falling into homelessness. And yet billionaires in the state have continued to see their fortunes grow to record heights. In 2021, 1 in 10 households were behind in rent, and 1 in 3 residents in Washington went hungry. Yet the wealth of Washington's 19 billionaires grew at an inconceivable 56%. We're in the midst of a great reckoning of an inequality divide. And I've lived in poverty, and I know a lot of those barriers, and we need to do more work to ensure that the wealthiest Washingtonians are paying their fair share towards essential social and health programs across the state.
Thank you. Next question, starting with Ms. Robinson this time. How would you propose to make housing and rent more affordable in our area?
Well, thank you for that very challenging question. This is an issue that I have worked on for many years, and we largely leave housing to the private sector to solve, believing that market forces are the way to make housing affordable. And I don't think that we're ever going to change that in this country, but it does not serve the very lowest income folks, and that number of people that it doesn't serve continues to grow. So housing is out of reach for so many people in our community now, and rents just continue to go up and up and up without a lot of underlying reasons for that increase. People say it's because of the pandemic, but a rent increase of 20% or 30%, or in some cases 40%, which constituents email me about every week, it seems extreme when costs have not increased that much for landlords. I do support some sort of restriction on rental increases. I honestly believe that's the only way that we're going to address this problem right now.
Thank you. Mr. Kemp.
So on affordable housing, first thing I would say is we need to bring more family wage jobs into this area. Good living wage jobs. We also need definitely a whole lot more housing options. Not just your low income cracker box houses, but we need to build bigger houses too. As families grow and start making better paychecks, they want to move out. They want to get a bigger house. They want a 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom, which then frees up the smaller house. We need to address the Growth Management Act. It is way outdated. It limits builders on where they can build, how they can build. And we need to start lessening some of these new building codes that have come out. They cause extra expenses, deleting resources like natural gas. It significantly increases the cost of housing. We need to start streamlining some of these permitting processes. Some of these builders take 6 to 8 months to be able to get a permit to be able to build. At that point in time, you've had 4 or 5 families who are waiting in line to be able to buy a house. these are the ideas that I have.
Thank you. Mr. Cortez.
Yeah, this is a, billion-dollar question, right? I continue to think that, diversification of our housing options at different price points is what we need to do. Duplexes, townhomes, apartments. We must also incentivize, mixed income housing. Studies have shown that is successful. I believe that there are opportunities for the state to facilitate education around successful models that are out there. Building up the city of Everett, a few years ago passed the Metro Everett zoning. So looking at our zoning and allowing for the diversification of housing and building up is something that I think can get us out of this. Now, you know, part of the housing at different price points is ensuring that we can get folks off the streets as well and housed. And the housing first model is something that I believe in. We've done pilot models here in the city of Everett, and that have worked in other parts of the state and other parts of the country. And having smaller homes available to folks that can afford even a duplex is something that we need to look at a little bit more carefully. Because that's the first step that they're going to be able to take in order to save up funds to hopefully one day go to a larger housing unit if that's something that they need, or be there while they receive services like mental health evaluations and support, or drug and alcohol evaluations and support. So I think building at different price points is something that we really need to focus on.
Thank you. Ms. Fosse.
Thanks. So recent stats that I've heard is that residents locally are spending 31 to 40% of their gross income on housing. And that's making us 1 or 2 paychecks away from becoming homeless. And our own county, Snohomish County, homelessness is at a 10-year high. This is partially due to the pandemic, but the housing supply, just the deficit and just the number of units has aided in the skyrocketing of costs. There are some prohibitions on, some of the rent control options that are available, but there are stronger tenant protections that we can pursue. We just need leaders in office that believe housing is also a human right. And so we must strengthen tenant rights. And some of those things are going to be, longer, longer notices for evictions and payment plans put into place for people trying to stay within their homes, because that's much more affordable than having to address housing and mental health issues after somebody's already evicted. So we need to do this, and also be working with our landlords to make sure that they are not negatively impacted as well.
Thank you. Over to Mr. Moody.
Well, my first problem as someone who pays rent is, why has the party that has been in office for over 30 years, why are we even having this problem? Why haven't we dealt with this years ago? Why haven't we enacted the rules that we're talking about now? Why are we just now beginning to talk about it instead of having it done, 20, 30 years ago? My problem that I have is that there's a bunch of regulations that the government seems to put on people that likes to keep them from being able to expand and to do the things that we can do that will grow our housing environment. Why are we building a swimming pool or a YMCA on acreage that we could be putting up multiple family housings? Why are we creating high density housings that drive people that would live in nice homes that Gary was talking about, but now they're going to be living in these canned apartments that are going up, not out. So I think housing is a big issue that we've had a lot of problems with. And again, I just want to keep driving the issue, is that why are we having this problem if the party that is in power had all of the ability to create the solutions? So we need to change that. We need to get rid of the people that have been taxing us to death. We need to get rid of the people who are telling us to lose and close our jobs, and get people that are business friendly and want small government.
Thank you. On to the next question, and this time we begin, of course, with Mr. Kemp. Would you support or oppose locating an additional airport with 1 to 3 runways in Snohomish County? Explain your reasoning.
Well, that all depends on where actually the airport is going to go. I mean, we just added Payne Field, which was actually really great to go to. Do you have a location for this place? It's kind of hard to say. It depends on where you put it. I mean, are you putting it in a rural area? Are you putting it in a housing development area? I mean, living by an airport's not a whole lot of fun, especially if you talk to the citizens that have to listen to it all day long. I mean, that'd be a really tough question to ask. I mean, I really don't have the data to answer that question.
Thank you. Mr. Cortez?
Yeah, that's definitely an exciting possibility. With airport comes a lot of potential business travel. We saw with Payne Field, folks that are looking for a new place to build a company or to move their company. Always airport. How far is the airport is one of the main questions that they ask. And having an airport like Payne Field has really brought a lot of an economic boom to Snohomish County, and not only with business travelers, but also the tourism industry. Snohomish County annually, I think it brings around $2 billion with tourism dollars, and that airport, Payne Field Airport, had a big part in that. I'd like to look at, and I know that there's folks a lot smarter than me looking at expanding Payne Field Airport, maybe by 1 or 2 gates. The question is asking for an additional airport of 1 to 3 runways. So I would like to see a better dive into whether we can expand Payne Field Airport. But I think I would be excited to learn that there's a new airport. There's room around the Arlington Airport as well. And I feel like that's still centralized enough where we can attract, again, businesses that are looking to move, but also bringing the tourism dollars to our area. So I would be in support after we, of course, explore it a little bit more.
Thank you. Ms. Fosse?
It's a very interesting question. I think I would need to know a little bit more about the proposed area and the reasoning behind it. Airports and such developments can be economic drivers. Tourism is great, or creating additional jobs, but as far as I would lean towards just personally the expansion of Payne Field first and foremost, but I guess I would have to hear a little bit more of the reasoning behind that of adding an additional airport. So yeah, interesting question.
Mr. Moody?
Well, I think not in my backyard is what the response that I would probably hear from a bunch of people if they wanted to have an airport close to them. I think a good idea would just take what we got and shore it up, strengthen it, grow it, expand it, do the things that we need to do to revitalize the opportunities that already exist as compared to trying to get a whole brand new airport. And so I think we would have an opportunity to definitely increase the economy. But, before we do that, we need to give them something to want to come to, such as safe streets. Get the drug addicts. You drive down Airport Road and Highway 99 down there, and it, looks like Tweakerville all over again. We need to get rid of the crime that's going to cause people to not want to get in an airplane and come visit us. So if we do those things, I think the airport problem might solve itself, because we'll be able to figure out where people want to go and where they're coming to. So right now, if we take the opportunities that we got to remove the politicians that have been in office for the last 30 decades or 3 decades, and put some people, not professional politicians, into office, we might be able to find solutions that will drive a whole bunch of these problems that we're talking about to places that we don't need to be. And that is safe streets.
Thank you. Ms. Robinson?
Thank you. There is definitely a need for additional airport capacity in the Puget Sound region, but I don't feel like we've maxed out Payne Field, which is a new airport here in Snohomish County. So before I would support an additional airport, which is what the question says, I would want to work to make sure we've maximized the resources that we currently have to serve the people who live here.
Thank you. Well, we're almost at the end, and I promised you a quick yes/no question. We're going to go in the same order as the last one. The question is, starting with Mr. Kemp, do you support ranked voting as an option, ranked choice voting?
No.
Mr. Cortez,
Yes.
Ms. Fosse,
Yes.
Mr. Moody,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, that takes us to our last question, which is a 60-second question. What additional issues or information would you like to bring to the attention of the community? Starting with Mr. Cortez.
Yeah, great. Well, again, bringing the issue of public safety. Right now, we all know that public safety is a crisis. Again, nationwide. I want to make sure that folks understand that you're not living in a horrible place. It's nationally where public safety is a big issue, and I want to make sure that people understand that we need to come together. We need to find a balance. We need to make sure that we support our law enforcement, but also ensure that our communities are safe. So I want to make that very clear. As a Mexican man, I of course grew up with fear of the police, and the more I have worked with them here in the last 5 years, I understand that they are people too, but we need to make sure that we keep folks accountable. So and my role in Olympia, if when I'm down there, is I want to make sure that I bring and enforce and strengthen the balance that exists in Olympia, and I look forward to not only working with subject matter experts, but listening to the people as well.
Thank you. Ms. Fosse.
Thanks. So I think I've been pretty transparent on my background and where I come from and why I will always be an advocate for working families. But I also want to elaborate that in these times, and from what I'm hearing from my neighbors at the door, is that there's a lot of fear about the divisions and what our future looks like. And I think that we need to think about leaders that believe that government should help people and support leaders that take the opportunity to heal those divisions and actually build community. We need to seek out other perspectives that are still missing from places of leadership and decision-making arenas. And I know there's a few candidates here that also agree with those values. And I hope to be one of those representatives in Olympia.
Thank you. Mr. Moody?
I think the first thing we can do is, give law enforcement the ability to do their jobs, and that will trickle down and create safe communities. Right now, it's not the law-abiding citizens that are out there committing these crimes and doing the things that are causing people to feel unsafe. So I think if we start supporting law enforcement in a better way, be as critical on the criminal as you are on the community that's trying to enforce the laws on them. So by getting rid of this, this flea law, Sheriff Forney put out a video today that just shows people being just literally, as soon as they get confronted by law enforcement, they drive over another car, ram into a car, run over somebody, and they literally flee. And the law enforcement can't do nothing. That is not safe communities. That is creating an emboldenment among criminals that allow them to do what they're doing. So if we want to get rid of the fear, then we want to get rid of the people that are in power right now that have caused that fear. So I say we change Olympia.
Thank you. Ms. Robinson?
Thank you. Well, I'd like to remind our community that, as we all know, we've been through a very challenging 2.5 years of a COVID pandemic. And that has sent us sort of into our corners in a way that none of us have experienced in our lifetime. And so what we're facing really unusual and challenging times right now. And I believe that it's going to take us coming back together, looking each other in the eye, talking to each other, and reminding each other how vulnerable each one of us is, and then supporting each other, building back our community structures and institutions that give us all a sense of belonging and a sense of community that we've been so desperately missing in the last few years through the pandemic.
Thank you. And the last word goes to you, Mr. Kemp.
Thank you, Vicki. I would have to say, public safety is one of the biggest number one issues we need to have fixed in this state. I mean, outdoor knocking every night, every door I'm talking, I'm asking, what is your top two priorities that you want to see fixed in this state? And it's public safety and the economy. That's the two biggest issues we need to tackle. But you know what? We're not going to do it alone. I've been a foreman on a lot of different job sites. And the best way to get a job done is to work together. We're not going to have all Republicans and all Democrats running the House. It's going to be both sides. We got to be able to step across the aisle, shake hands with the person next to you and say, hey, we need to work on this together to make our communities better. That's what I want to do when I get to Olympia.
Thank you. So the League appreciates these candidates for joining us and for running for office. A recording of this forum and others will be available on the League of Women Voters of Snohomish County website and on our YouTube channel. Find links at lwvsnoho.org. We encourage you to explore additional information about these and all candidates. The Snohomish County voter pamphlet will be mailed to residences starting on October 8th. Vote411.org, sponsored by the League of Women Voters, is another good source for nonpartisan voting information. Ballots will be mailed on October 20th, and Election Day is November 8th. Please be a voter. This concludes our candidate forum. Thank you to the team members who made this forum possible: Karen Crowley, Michelle Fry, Valerie Kelly, and Nadine Shanty. And finally, thank you all for joining us.